So what I'm going to do is getting some background and then into what results we have achieved within Food for Me in ethical and legal issues. First a few words about what ethics is. That might be unnecessary. That's analysis of normative dimensions of human relations. And there are several kinds of ethics. I'm mainly talking about applied ethics, which is what we are doing here. That's often based on what we call intrinsic values derived from normative ethical theories. And the aim is to discuss arguments and suggest solutions to relational situations, real or imagined, and not least to suggest solutions to complex dilemmas. And it's evident in personalized nutrition that a large number of ethical dilemmas appear of different kinds. And I'm sure you have a number of them in your own mind, but I give you two examples here. Will the value of receiving specific genetic information and nutritional advice be more important than the possible negative effects of learning to know that one is at higher risk than average to have a disease? That's a very important question when it comes to genetic analysis, which gives precisely this information. And another example is, what's the relative value of individual freedom of health control if you compare that to the interest of society to guide people to live the right lives with respect to initiating incentives on population level to encourage responsible nutritional habits? Well, this problem may be greater if you are looking at the personal freedom to deviate from recommendations, to smoke, to drink too much, to eat too much, all these things, while the society wants to have a healthy life, not cost too much in healthcare, etc. While personalized nutrition may be a little easier to fit into that concept. So the tensions may be smaller for people who are health seekers in this respect than those who are not health seekers. I come back to that question. So I think it's interesting to go back to analysis which I and others were making in the early days of personalized nutrition. It's easy to see that some of the concerns and some of the comments that were made at that time are now obsolete in different ways, and others are as actual as they were at that time. And I just give you a short overview of some of the comments. One major article that I wrote in 2006 points out that well-being is a much broader concept than health. And if you as a scientist look at health, you may look at, scientifically measurable things, while personal well-being is something which has to do with your relations, society and culture and all these things. Also, modern society seems, as a kind of scientific society, to have a tendency to identify well-being with external rather than subjective circumstances, to identify well-being with health and to create exaggerated health expectations. So that kind of tension between well-being and a narrower health concept creates a kind of problem. Further, public attitudes to the use of gene technology were at that time very discussed, not least because of the resistance against genetically modified organisms and their use in society and their use for food, etc. So the public attitudes to gene technology, what are they? Some people said that that's only misunderstanding from people, or ignorance, or things like that. But it was evident from a large number of interesting investigations that the public attitudes depend on perception of usefulness and risk, as well as moral convictions and trust in science. So I took as an example that the people were very favorable in using DNA as a tool for police work. By using genetically modified organisms to put into my food, there was a large resistance to that. So people were not generally against genetic information and use of genetic information. It's a question of well, risk, usefulness, and also a large number of moral convictions involved. Measures to improve health is valuable, but exaggerated attention to personalized health may lead to healthism, and unhealthy quest for health was a comment I made at that time. So healthism was a concept which got some attention. I have a large number of articles at that time pointing out healthism as a mainly modern middle-class phenomenon that was very widespread. And even Bretman pointed out a kind of label for a kind of sickness he called orthorexia nervosa, which is, well, evidently a word for a nervous sickness connected to trying to do everything right, trying to eat right. Well, with that kind of problem, like orthodoxia nervosa or healthism, will that be a problem connected to personalized nutrition? That was very much a question, and I can say afterwards, several investigations tend to indicate that this is certainly not a larger problem within this specified area than in the general society. Well, I remember the Institute for the Future, you referred to them earlier, they say about 1/3 of the population are health seekers in a fairly strong way. And some of them, well, may have problems of this kind, but most of them don't. And there doesn't seem to be anything that proves that the idea of personalized nutrition, well, is special in this area. And one further comment is the problem of medication. May personalized nutrition limit the role of some or all food to medicine and transform eating to lifelong medication? Is that a kind of problem? Personally, I revised my thinking about this when I was on a visit to China 2 years ago now. And I found that with a different attitude to food and to the healthiness of food, well, people can certainly live with the idea of food not only as a kind of enjoyment or nourishment, but also something that you can benefit from in other ways. So the recommendations at that time was personalized nutrition must be based on solid knowledge, which seems to be still valid. Phenotypic analysis should be used when adequate. When a genetic test can have a clear advantage, this should be preferred. I don't think very much has changed that. Opportunistic screening should only be used when clearly beneficial. Well, difficult to say anything about that. Specially trained persons should collect information from genetic tests and carry through counseling on a personal basis. I think it may be valid as an idea, but it would limit the use of this very much. And we also see that the development of internet as a communication tool has very much changed our view of what a personal basis is and personal communication. Anyway, a large number of companies appeared in the middle of the first decade of this century, and what's happened after that was that the US Government Accountability Office made a fairly large investigation of some of these companies and made different claims that they misled the public, those who received the information, and they used, some of them used more lifestyle information than genetic information in their advices. Many of them tried to sell unnecessary or expensive nutritional supplements that they were marketing. Comments and criticism, there was a kind of cleaning of this market, evidently. And today we see a number of companies smaller than before, but those who are doing this, they tend to be more careful. However, there are more problems connected to that, which I will come back to. Also, finally, development of special products for personalized nutrition may be necessary in some cases. However, this may also lead to a medicalization of diet. The products for personalized nutrition, we haven't seen very much of that. And I guess I can understand that, because a very small number of people so far have taken genetic tests in order to have food advice. And also, it will be very difficult to create products that would fit small groups and small different groups. So I think the idea, which was very strong and vivid at that time, of personalized products is not longer that strong at all. And I understand that some companies that were interested and looked at that have dropped the idea at this time. Now, that's a little look back, and I think it was interesting to have this background. Now we are going to Food for Me and what's happening with ethics there. The task for me to review research design, advise researchers, to start with a baseline assessment of different aspects, and well, to keep dialogue with other work packages and connect the final assessment. I won't go into that in detail. So our first large effort was to start to have a workshop where we collected people from Food for Me, from external experts in ethics and stakeholders. In 2 days we have a fairly vivid discussion on different aspects of this, and it did stand for itself, but it created food for thought for people in Work Package 5 together with some others to develop the ideas that came up and to make what we call a baseline assessment of the ethical aspects of personalized nutrition at that time. So this was now in 2011 to 13 compared to 2006. And we choose to do in this analysis was to focus more on a few specific areas of interest. So these were the 4 areas that we tried to delve into. Do we know enough to implement personalized nutrition? What is the relation between food and health? Will personalized nutrition strengthen or weaken individual autonomy? And which ethical conflicts are connected to commercialization of personalized nutrition? You recognize this from the concerns earlier, but it's a more limited amount of questions. So what did we have to say on these questions? First, do we know enough? The question is the current knowledge base sufficiently strong for taking ethical, responsible decision to offer personalized nutrition advice based upon gene, diet, health interaction? there is a disagreement on this, evidently. And this was evident already in the workshop, where John had a presentation, and he was not able to be personally present, but he had a virtual presence. So John is one of the voices here, and what his main argument is that, on the one hand, the scientific evidence for personalized nutritional advice is limited still. We have only limited knowledge of all the many thousand genes. We have only studied a very small amount, which we know affect metabolism. And also, they work together is also very, very little known. And further, the motivation this gives people is not very well understood. So this gives a very limited place for personalized nutrition at this moment. But on the other hand, which Keith Grimaldi argues, is that the standard population-based dietary advice is partly derived from epidemiological observations and usually not proven like clinical trials. So it's a very low standard of trustable investigations that are behind these standard population advice. They are also very much discussed in detail how they should be set up. In a number of specific cases of gene-diet interaction, it's clear that individuals may benefit from following personalized rather than general dietary recommendations. A large number of recommendations that could be made from personalized nutrition is that with your genetic profile, it's especially important for you to follow the standard guidelines in certain respects. But there are also deviations from this, like folate. Well, you have a special genetic compound which makes that you should deviate from the standard folate intake and see to it that you have a higher intake of folate. So it's evident that in a small number of cases there is evidence enough to give such advice. And that is a kind of tension between these two. The interesting question is what comes out of this tension between these two ideas. How can we responsibly go forward in such a situation which is characterized by limited knowledge and disagreement? And we propose two different approaches for an ethical, responsible way forward. First, arguing from a precautionary approach, it's suggested that personalized dietary advice should be offered only when there is strong scientific evidence for health effects, followed by stepwise evaluation of unforeseen behavioral and psychological effects. What does this mean? That a precautionary approach has been understood in very, very many different ways. This is a very restricted use of precaution, saying only that in a situation where you know little, you should see to it that you don't overestimate the benefits and you don't underestimate the risks of what you are doing. And while you are doing that, you can have a kind of help to decide whatever you are doing. Well, secondly, arguing from a theoretical and applied ethics as well as psychology, it's also suggested that personalized advice should avoid paternalism and instead focus on supporting the autonomous choice of each person. In practice, this means don't tell people what to do, but give them enough information to make a fair choice themselves. So the second question we looked at is food and health. And there are, in principle, two main ideas which we put forward. Food is not only nutrition, but it's connected to social contexts, cultural values, and identities. That is relations, that is emotions, that is all kinds of different subjective aspects of food and relational aspects of food. We suggest that personalized nutrition should integrate the scientific approach with everyday cultural, emotional, ethical, and sensual understandings of food. That is, not only take the scientific data into account, but do take the cultural, emotional, personal aspects of food intake into account when thinking about personalized nutrition. And secondly, health, the concept of health. Health is not necessarily a descriptive concept. It may be seen as an instrumental in relation to individual life plans, a perspective that turns health into a more complex and value-laden concept. We suggest that a holistic and individualistic understanding of health and illness has advantages compared to a reductionistic biostatistical theory. So scientists tend to use this, well, more or less a standard biostatistical theory for health measurement. But a subjective approach to the idea of being healthy has a large number of advantages in this respect. We don't argue that we should replace the biostatistical theory with the subjective aspects, but they need to be added to each other and work together. The third number of questions are the question of values. Mainly, the main question is, will personalized nutrition strengthen or weaken individual autonomy? The idea is that individualization of health promotion may be accompanied by an extended attribution of individual responsibility for health. This constitutes what has been called, or we would call, the dilemma of individualization, which is caused by a conflict between the right to individual freedom and the interest of society with respect to initiating incentives at the population level to encourage responsible nutritional habits. You recognize that from earlier comments. But and also, secondly, owing to the complexity of information with regard to food, a certain amount of trust is necessary. In general, trust is essential for food and health sector. All the more, this applies to personalized nutrition, as the consumer has no possibility to entirely verify the scientific basis for personalized nutritional offerings. We need to take this aspect of trust into account. And how do we do that? Well, not to try to enforce trust, but all those who need to be trusted must deserve this trust, and that is the main lesson. Trust must be deserved. Fourth, consumers on the internet. Ethical and legal aspects of commercialization. Consumers often have a positive attitude to the option of receiving personalized nutrition advice. Yes. However, current direct-to-consumer offerings, that is, the companies that are working just now over the internet, they suffer from a questionable level of trustfulness and consumer protection, as well as tension between far-reaching promises and contrasting disclaimers. And we have looked carefully at a number of those companies that are active now, and it's very evident that in the main text they give very strong promises that you can be empowered by this information to take control over your own health. On the other hand, on the fine print, which you read on another page, there are strong disclaimers saying this is not a doctoral advice, it's not really an advice, it's just a kind of comment, and anything which has with your health to do, you must consult your doctor and discuss that with him. So there is an enormous tension between those two different claims, and that constitutes actually a big problem, partly because from an ethical point of view and also from a legal point of view, consumer protection is crucial, and caution must be taken when putting nutrigenomic-based tests and advice services on the market. And this involves the question of legal regulation. So this is a strong voice against this tension between strong promises and disclaimers. And we think, when we have talked legally, people from the legal side and from the ethical side, that this creates the need of stronger legal regulation on this. Now, in the further work, which is not ready yet, we have a dialogue with other work packages, and we are especially working with work package 1, which we heard a lot from, and with work package 4, the proof of principle study, where 4 of the people involved in the ethical and legal work package are acting as participating observers or experimental participants in the proof of principle study to see that. We're also looking at the question of as you mentioned, I should say a few words on that, on the ethical problems that arise when we are trying to do an internet-based intervention of this kind. And the discussions with the different ethical boards in different countries have some interesting food for thought in this aspect. And that's an ongoing work which we have no final comments on yet. We will have a second workshop next spring, and a final report which will take the current work in Food for Me into account. And I won't go further into that. Thank you very much.